One moment, one decision, one cannon shot that changed history. October 5th, 1795. Paris. A crowd of royalists, thousands of them, are marching through the streets toward the National Convention. They want to overthrow the revolutionary government. They're armed. They're angry. And they're not stopping. Inside the Tuileries Palace, the politicians are panicking. They need someone to defend them. Someone ruthless enough to do what needs to be done. They call a 26-year-old artillery officer. His name is Napoleon Bonaparte. He's unemployed. He's broke. He's desperate for any opportunity. They ask him one question. Can you stop them? But before we get into that, if you're enjoying this story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I'm building a complete series on Napoleon's rise and fall, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. Napoleon doesn't hesitate. He orders his cannons loaded with grape shot, a devastating anti-personnel round. When the royalists get close enough, he gives the order, fire. The streets run red, hundreds dead. The rebellion is crushed in minutes. That single decision, that willingness to pull the trigger when others wouldn't, started a chain reaction. 9 years later, Napoleon Bonaparte would crown himself Emperor of France. This is the story of how a nobody became the most powerful man in Europe. Let's rewind. Because Napoleon's rise doesn't start in Paris. It starts on a small island off the coast of Italy. Corsica, 1769. Napoleon is born into a minor noble family. Barely noble, really. They have a title but no money. And here's the problem. Corsica had just been conquered by France the year before. So Napoleon grows up in a family that resents French rule, but he's going to spend his entire life trying to prove he belongs in France. At age 9, he's sent to military school on the mainland, and immediately, he's an outsider. He speaks French with a thick Corsican accent. The other students mock him, call him a foreigner. He's small, awkward, obsessed with books about ancient Rome, but he's brilliant, especially at mathematics. And he graduates early, becoming an artillery officer at just 16 years old. Here's the thing, though. Being smart doesn't pay the bills. Napoleon spends his early 20s bouncing between military posts, reading constantly, writing terrible romance novels on the side. He's ambitious, but he has no connections. No money, no path forward. By 1795, he's 26 years old and his career is going nowhere. He's been removed from active duty because of his political connections. He's living in Paris, practically homeless, so broke he can't afford a decent pair of boots. He even considers leaving France entirely. There's talk of him joining the Ottoman army in Turkey just to have a paycheck. And then, October 5th happens. The day that changes everything. France in 1795 is chaos. The revolution has devoured itself. King Louis XVI was executed 2 years earlier. Robespierre and the Terror followed. Now the Directory, a group of 5 politicians, is trying to hold the country together, and they're failing. Royalists want to restore the monarchy. Radicals want another revolution. Paris is a powder keg. When the royalist mob marches on the convention, the Directory is desperate. They need a military man who won't hesitate. Someone mentions Napoleon Bonaparte, this young artillery officer who's been hanging around trying to get reassigned. Paul Barras, one of the directors, remembers him from a previous campaign. He gives Napoleon command of the defense. Napoleon has hours to prepare. He sends a young cavalry officer named Joachim Murat to seize the artillery from a nearby depot. At the last second, they haul 40 cannons into position around the Tuileries. When the royalists advance, Napoleon doesn't give a warning. He doesn't negotiate. He orders his gunners to fire directly into the crowd. The French have a phrase for what happened. A whiff of grape shot. It's almost poetic, except it's describing mass slaughter. Grape shot turns cannons into giant shotguns. Hundreds of small metal balls tearing through flesh. The streets of Paris echo with screams. Bodies pile up. The royalist rebellion collapses in less than an hour. Napoleon has just killed French citizens on French soil to protect the government, and the government loves him for it. Overnight, Napoleon goes from unemployed nobody to the most famous soldier in France. Barras promotes him to General of the Interior. He's suddenly in charge of defending Paris. He has money. He has influence. He has power. And he's only 26 years old. But here's what makes Napoleon different from every other ambitious general. He doesn't stop. Most men would have been satisfied. They'd ride that fame for a while, enjoy the salary, play it safe. Not Napoleon. Within months, he's lobbying for a field command. He wants to lead the army of Italy, a half-starved, demoralized force that's been losing to the Austrians for years. Everyone thinks he's insane. The Army of Italy is a death sentence for your career. But Napoleon sees an opportunity. In March 1796, he arrives in Nice to take command. His soldiers are shocked. This short, thin, pale young man with long hair and a serious face. This is their new general. Some of them laugh. That lasts about a week. Napoleon gives a speech. He tells them they're going to invade Italy, defeat the Austrians, and make themselves rich with plunder. Then he proves he means it. In the next 14 months, Napoleon fights and wins more than a dozen major battles. Montenotte, Lodi, Arcole, Rivoli. He doesn't fight like other generals. He moves fast. He strikes where the enemy doesn't expect. He uses artillery like a scalpel, and he's ruthless. Completely ruthless. The Austrians are the dominant military power in Europe, and Napoleon is embarrassing them. He's conquering northern Italy, forcing kingdoms to surrender, sending treasure back to Paris. He becomes a legend. French newspapers print stories about him constantly. Pamphlets with his picture sell out. He's 27 years old and he's the most famous man in France. But Italy isn't enough. Napoleon wants something bigger, something mythic. In 1798, he proposes an invasion of Egypt. Why Egypt? Because it's exotic. It's ancient. It connects to Alexander the Great and Julius Caesar, Napoleon's heroes. And strategically, it threatens Britain's route to India. The Directory approves it, partly because they're afraid of how popular Napoleon is becoming. Maybe if he's in Egypt, he'll be less dangerous. So Napoleon sails with an army of 40,000 men, plus scientists and scholars. He wants to conquer Egypt and turn it into a French colony. He wants to be remembered like the great conquerors of history. And at first it works. He crushes the Mamluk forces at the Battle of the Pyramids. Cairo falls. Napoleon stands in front of the Sphinx and imagines himself as a pharaoh. But then everything falls apart. The British destroy his fleet at the Battle of the Nile. Napoleon's army is trapped in Egypt. Disease spreads. Supply lines collapse. His invasion of Syria fails miserably. By 1799, the Egyptian campaign is a disaster. But here's the genius of Napoleon. He controls the narrative. Back in France, newspapers only print his victories. They don't mention the losses. They don't talk about the thousands of dead soldiers. The French public thinks Napoleon is winning. So when Napoleon decides to abandon his army in Egypt and sail back to France in secret, he's not returning in disgrace. He's returning as a hero, and France in 1799 desperately needs a hero. The Directory is failing. France is losing wars on multiple fronts. The economy is collapsing. People are starving. The politicians are corrupt and incompetent. There's talk of another revolution, another terror. Into this chaos walks Napoleon Bonaparte, fresh from conquering Egypt, beloved by the army and the public. Within weeks, Napoleon is plotting a coup. He partners with politicians who are just as frustrated with the Directory. The plan is simple. Use the army to force the Directory to resign, then install a new government with Napoleon in charge. On November 9th, 1799, 18 Brumaire in the revolutionary calendar, Napoleon executes the coup. It nearly fails. When Napoleon tries to address the Council of 500, the legislators surround him, screaming, "Outlaw him! Down with the dictator!" Napoleon's brother Lucien, who's presiding over the council, saves him by calling in the grenadiers. Soldiers storm the chamber with bayonets. The legislators scatter, jumping out of windows to escape. By the next morning, France has a new government, the consulate. 3 consuls rule France, and Napoleon is first consul. In theory, they share power. In practice, Napoleon is in complete control. He's 30 years old. He's been famous for 4 years. And now he's running France. And here's what shocks everyone. He's actually good at it. Napoleon doesn't just want military glory. He wants to remake France. Over the next few years, he implements massive reforms. He creates the Napoleonic Code, a legal system that's still the basis of law in dozens of countries. He reforms education, building state-run schools and universities. He stabilizes the currency. He signs a concordat with the Pope, ending years of religious conflict. He builds roads, bridges, monuments. France is still at war with half of Europe, but internally, Napoleon is bringing order and prosperity, and people love him for it. After a decade of chaos and bloodshed, Napoleon represents stability. In 1802, he holds a referendum asking if he should be consul for life. The vote isn't even close. 3.5 million yes, 8,000 no. Napoleon is now a dictator in everything but name, but it's still not enough. Being consul for life isn't permanent. It's not hereditary. Napoleon can't pass power to an heir. If he wants to build something lasting, he needs a title that's recognized across Europe. He needs to be a monarch. So in 1804, Napoleon makes his final move. He declares himself Emperor of the French, December the 2nd, 1804. Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. The Pope himself, Pius VII, has been brought to Paris to consecrate the new emperor. Every monarch in Europe is watching. The ceremony is designed to be magnificent. Napoleon wears a gold laurel crown, a purple velvet cloak, all the symbols of imperial power. The Pope raises the crown to place it on Napoleon's head, and then Napoleon takes it from him. He crowns himself. The message is clear. I don't owe this power to God, to the church, to inheritance, or to anyone. I took it. I earned it. This crown is mine. 9 years earlier, Napoleon Bonaparte was an unemployed artillery officer, desperate and broke, willing to do anything for a chance. Now he's Emperor of France, ruler of 30 million people, master of the most powerful army in the world. All because on one October day in 1795, when the moment came, he didn't hesitate. He fired the shot. And he's been firing ever since. But here's the thing about empires built this fast, with this much ambition, with this much blood. They don't last. The same ruthlessness that built Napoleon's empire is going to tear it apart. But that's a story for another time. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe. I'm building a complete series on Napoleon's life and campaigns, so there's a lot more coming. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.